and thanks for the opportunity. I think before I begin, I just want to introduce myself. And share my screen. Give me a sec. I've only got 3 slides, I promise. There we go. I'm actually just going to work through it like this. So my name is Gideon Jacobs, or Gideon Jacobs for the English folk, and I'm the Modern Workplace lead at McCoastal. Today we'll be covering policies and procedures using the modern, or the Power Platform rather. And I'll give everyone a high-level walkthrough on how you can build a solution to essentially manage and track the acceptance of policies and procedures using the Power Platform. So before we jump straight into the demo, I think let's just quickly discuss some of the business goals we would like to address, and quickly run through some of the solution components, and then I'll demo the solution to everyone. Cool. So there's 4 main business goals that we highlighted as part of this. The first was to publish and approve policies and procedures, and to track the life cycle of these files. So for those of you who are familiar with SharePoint Online, that's typically the technology that we would use to upload policies, and in some scenarios tag it with specific metadata, maybe follow an approval process of some sort. For the purpose of this demo, however, I'm just assuming that the policies that I've uploaded have already been approved. Then the second business goal there was cloud and mobile capabilities. So to enable staff to view and accept policies and procedures using their mobile phones at any time and from anywhere. So maybe just if I can talk to that, it's all good and well having policies and procedures stored somewhere, but the biggest pain point most organizations have is that, it's quite difficult to track the acceptance of that. Typically things would get printed out, filed, and, it's got a high sort of carbon footprint. Then lastly, insights on top of that. So, it's all good and well for people to accept these policies, but how do we report on that? So the goal there is to provide management with a dashboard to track the acceptance of policies and procedures of their team members, and for us to use a unified platform, rather using technologies in silo. Let's leverage the Microsoft 365 software as a service technology stack and see what we can do around that. Then the third slide, as you probably saw on the left with the thumbnail, is just the solution components. So we make use of SharePoint to manage and store the policies. The Power App that I'm going to show you today is how we can access and accept the policies. And there's a Power Automate workflow that we've created as well. It's only got 3 actions in there, but that's required to render the policy in the Power App. I'll take everyone through that as well. And then lastly, also the Power BI report to track the acceptance and whether people has viewed the policies and procedures. Cool. So as promised, only 3 slides. Let's jump straight into it. So what we have here is so I'm going to first just jump to the SharePoint site. So I've created a SharePoint team site and SharePoint Online to store the different policies. Now, these are all sample policies that I downloaded off the internet. They're freely available, and there's a free license. So it's not linked to our company in any shape or form. I've just added a few metadata columns to this document library. Again, this is just an example. There are tons of opportunities and ways that you can enhance the solution. You can have expiry dates, renewal dates, approvals in here, document retention, conversion to PDF, etc. For now, as I've mentioned, these are published and final policies that we've just uploaded and tagged with basic metadata. Then there's also a tracker list that we have. So the tracker list is a SharePoint list that we've created with a few metadata columns. These are all single line of text fields, and this we we would use in our Power App and in our Power BI report to actually track the acceptance of, when users accept and view the policies. You'll see that there's a reference here called document ID. And a little bit later, I'll show everyone how the document ID actually, what the relationship is between this list and the document library where we store the files. Okay, so let's move on then. We've covered where the policies are stored and where we actually track the acceptance of the policies. Maybe just one thing to mention here is that although I've used SharePoint to store the documents and the metadata as well as tracking the acceptance, this can also be done using the CDS, the Common Data Service. I would actually recommend that for larger organizations, but yeah, we can use both data sources in this scenario. Okay, so going into the solution, we'll see that I actually have the app open here in front of me. So the app itself consists of a few screens. So the Power App was built using a blank canvas. So if we go back to new app, you'll see that these are the three options. For those of you that are new to Power Apps, we've selected the canvas. It's a canvas type app. It's not a model driven or a portal app. So it's important that everyone just understands that. On the app itself, we connect to SharePoint as a data source, and we also connect to Microsoft Flow, which I will explain to everyone in a minute. So those are the two main data sources that we have. There's also we also make use of collections in this app. So the collections are used to store the data in memory. So rather as doing the queries against the data sources itself, we pull the data and we filter the data and we put that in different collections inside of our app. And then when we do our queries, we work with the collections rather than the data sources. All right, so going back to the app itself, I'm going to quickly touch on the three different screens that we have over here, and then I'll do a quick demo once I'm done. So the browse screen that you see consists of a heading here with the refresh button, a sort button over here on the right, and also a search box. Inside of this browse screen, and one of the main elements to this application or this Power App is this gallery that we've included. So this gallery is linked to the documents library where we upload and store all of our policies and procedures. This gallery also has a label in here for each item that displays the status to the current user on whether they've accepted, viewed, or read the policy. So you'll see that there's a label which we've added in here and a formula to filter the collection that ties back to that tracker list that I've shown everyone. It checks whether the user matches the user that is logged in, and then it sees whether they've accepted or not accepted that particular document. So essentially what it does in the background is it takes all of the documents, it takes all of the items that's been logged in the tracker, it merges them together based on the ID of the document and the ID that we have in the tracker list, and then it filters them based on the user that's currently logged in to see whether they've accepted or not accepted the document or that particular policy and procedure. Okay, that's the status label. Then we also have this button over here. You might be familiar with that button that typically navigates a user to another Power App screen. So over here, we navigate the user to the read screen. So if they've already accepted the policy, we navigate them to a different screen where they can only read the policy. If they haven't accepted the policy, we navigate them to the screen where they can then go and accept the policy, which is called the accept screen. I will show you that in a minute as well. Okay. Every time the user clicks on any of those green icons, we also patch the SharePoint list in the background, because that's how we keep track of whether users have accepted the policy or not. And as you'll see, that the first item that we log for a user is the not accepted. So it means that if that status is not viewed for that policy and the user clicks on that button, then we will write not accepted to that list with the details of that user, the link of that specific document ID, as well as the full name of that user. Okay, let's just move on. Then on the accept screen, and I'll give everyone a demo just now. On the accept screen, we have this, let me just go on visible. Okay, so here's where we reference that Power App flow. So as soon as the user navigates to this accept screen, there's a few other variables and things we set, which I'm not going to go into too much detail now, but what is important here is to take note of this workflow that we trigger. So we actually call this PA company policies. I think there was a copy in that workflow, but we call this PA just stands for Power Apps company policies workflow. And then in that workflow, we get the file content for that specific item that the user has selected. Unfortunately, in Power Apps, there's no easier way really to just link a PDF viewer directly to a field in SharePoint that would include the content of the file. So that's why you need to use this small little workaround. I'm happy to share this workflow with anyone after the session. There's also some articles on the internet that explains this in more detail, but this is the way you would go about fetching the content of a file and then rendering that in a PDF viewer in Power Apps. Okay, so that will get triggered when we land on this accept screen. And also lastly, once the user then accepts the policy, we would patch that list again, but with a different status that says accepted. So remember, the first status was not accepted. That's when they click on it. And then once they confirm the acceptance, we would write to that list again with the status that says accepted. Okay, enough talking. Let's quickly go to the app. I'm actually logged in as different users on the side, just to show you how that would work. So here I'm logged in as Robert. And on this side, I'm logged in as Maria. In fact, let me just show the screen like that. So here you can clearly see that the statuses are different for the different users. So if I refresh on this side, refresh on this side. Okay, cool. So that would be Robert. Let's go to the occupational workplace cell item. I'll click on that. It will trigger the workflow on the visible screen, and it should render it in a second. There we go. There's the policy. So if this user now had to click back, the status would still be set to not accepted. If they click back in to this item and they click accept and confirm, then it would update it to accepted. And then the next time they click in here, they won't be able to accept it again. They will only be able to click back. Obviously, the same applies for this user. They can accept it, they can confirm it, and they can click back. All right, so same experience for the different users. I think one thing to just take note of is that this was built using the mobile view so this renders specifically aimed at mobile devices. It's quite easy to build this app in the sort of desktop canvas view as well, where you would then list all of the policies on the left and then have the PDF viewer to your right using a single screen rather than having the multiple screens. Okay, great. So let's maybe just quickly jump back to over here.
Excuse me, Gideon. I just have a question.
Yeah.
You would be able to extend, the app as well to maybe accept a signature.
Yeah, absolutely.
And push. Okay.
Yeah, so we can use the drawing functionality and incorporate that as part of the app. That's a good question, actually. I think if I can just sort of think out loud here, you would probably add that on the acceptance screen below where the policy is. But you'll see now in the Power BI report, what's nice about writing this into a list or even in the CDS is we can actually report on this. Okay, so using Power BI, so this report's obviously built already. I'm not going to build it from scratch. I don't think there's enough time for that. But maybe just to show you some of the elements and key items to this report, the data source over here is that policy site that I've just shown everyone. If we look at the queries, so what we've done is we've connected to the data source where we've selected those two different lists. I've also just renamed and removed some of the columns which we don't need as part of this report. That always helps with the performance of a Power BI report and also for the file size in case you want to share this with anyone else. So it's always a good practice just to trim off the data that you don't need. So that is the transformation. So here we've renamed a few columns, we've removed a few columns, we've expanded a few, we've expanded the author to get the actual title, and here we've also renamed and removed a few. Close that. Okay, and then another thing to just take note of is the relationships that we've created. So this is not a very complicated entity model, but it's only got this one relationship, which is the ID of the document and the document ID in Tracker. And that's a one-to-many. So what that means is one document can have many related tracking list entries. So you'll see there, this is just done the other way around, many to one, but the same principle applies. Many tracking items are all related to a single document. Okay, it's important that you do that relational or that you configure that relationship. Otherwise, some of the visuals on the report won't display. Just gonna go back in here. Okay. We also had to create a few DAX queries. So DAX queries, DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions, and it's a query language you can use in Power Apps to return and transform data in a table format. So at first, this view status column wasn't on the report, so we had to create a few measures here on the right to get the matching rows from the tracker list, and then to display whether the selected user has in fact accepted or viewed that particular policy. So if I had to click on Maria's name, for instance, then you'll see that Maria has accepted the smoking policy. These ones she hasn't viewed. But if I now had to go back to Maria's profile, let's go to occupational workplace. Confirm that one. Go back to the report, occupational workplace. If I refresh the data, then fingers crossed that should work. I think one thing to obviously keep in mind is I'm using the Power BI desktop version. Ideally, obviously, if you license for Power BI on your Microsoft 365 tenant, there you can see that it's updated. If you are licensed for Power BI, it would be probably best to publish this to a workplace or as an app on Microsoft 365, and then to have a scheduled data refresh, so that if multiple people access this report or dashboard, then at least we know that it's the latest data that always gets displayed. And also then to allow the users to build on this and to create their own dashboards. One thing I do want to just quickly touch on is that it might be useful in some scenarios to incorporate that policies and procedures app in Teams. I know there's a big drive to build apps and to make these apps available in Microsoft Teams, as Microsoft Teams is now becoming the sort of central hub for teamwork. So using Microsoft Teams, you'll see that I've actually incorporated that app on the left. I could have renamed it. It could have been a desktop app, etc. So if company policies is very important to your business and you want to make users aware of this and allow them to very easily access, these kinds of applications without them having to navigate to an intranet or even Power Apps, you can always publish this to Microsoft Teams. It's actually quite easy to do. I'll just going to quickly take everyone through that. Cool. Okay, so what you do is you select your application that you want to publish. You export that package, or sorry, you click on Add to Teams. That's then going to give you a zip file. View and download. Okay, there's a button here that says Download App. That should give you there's a zip file, company policies. Cool. And then in the Teams Admin Center, just quickly navigate to there. Okay. So there's two ways you can do this. The one would be to just upload this app as a team app, and then the user can go and search for the app and add the app to their Microsoft Teams instance themselves if they feel like doing that. Otherwise, what you can do is you can deploy this to users within your organization. Typically, the default policy that you would see in Microsoft Teams would always be the organization-wide policy. And this basically means that, it speaks for itself. It's whatever you publish in here would be available to everyone. But you can set up additional policies in here. So if you only want that app to be available for a specific or selected number of users, then you can create another policy in here and then select those users. Maybe it's your finance team or your ops team, or even your first line workers. This is a good example, and this is also a default policy that's in here. In this case, I just went in here and I've uploaded the app. It usually takes a while to actually cascade and publish through to Microsoft Teams. I think it can take a few hours depending on when that service runs in the background. But what you can do here is you can move it up and down, and eventually what would happen is it would be available on your Teams instance, like I've shown just now. Where is that? Yeah. Cool. So I think a few enhancements to this would probably be to maybe look at some of the, the premium capabilities of Power Apps, such as push notifications, maybe to use some, approval cards in Teams perhaps, and to possibly move that data to the common data service, and as I've mentioned, to publish that report to Power BI online to have your scheduled data refreshes and other capabilities. Yeah, so that's the solution. We've touched on SharePoint, taken everyone through the Power App itself, the basic workflow we need to render that file or that PDF file in the Power App, and then also the Power BI report to actually get insights into the tracking of the policies.
So Gideon, the app itself, right? So you display a PDF, but it could be something else, correct? It could be an image. I'm just thinking aloud. In scenarios where you have to verify documentation or images, it might be an upload of somebody's ID document, or it might be, documentation that they've completed and sent through, those type of things. This would work perfect for that. I need to make sure that the information that was provided is what's required firstly, and then is correct, right?
Absolutely, and it works really well with Word documents as well. So you might have instances, as you've rightly mentioned, where it might be a different file type. So you can apply the same principles. And again, I think something to just take note of is that this doesn't just have to work for policies and procedures. It can be an acknowledgement and acceptance for any kind or type of document. By using that rendering capability.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Sorry,
I haven't seen any questions from anybody on the call. If there is, please guys unmute yourself, and we can go and ask some more questions or so. So Gideon, I see there is a hand that's raised. In order for us just to get hold of this app or see how you built this app and function app, how can people get hold of you?
So I've added my email address to the slide, but seeing that we're going to be sharing this deck or the information, I'm happy to share my contact details as well with everyone on the call. Probably best to just drop me an email. Obviously, I'll be happy to connect with everyone on LinkedIn. And then we can take the discussions further from there.
Great. So I see there was a hand raised. I missed that. I don't know if you saw who it was.
I think it was Spuziso, if I'm not mistaken. If it wasn't, then I apologize. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was me, guys. Thanks for the opportunity. Really great presentation there, Gideon.
Thank you.
I'm fairly new to Power Apps, but then what I wanted to ask was the collection section you went through. Was that, I don't know, according to my understanding, was that some sort of like an extract from your data source to your collections?
Yeah, so for the purpose of this application, we take all the data that gets captured in the tracker list specifically, and we just capture that in a collection in the app itself. In Power Apps, it has what's called a limit for when you filter and retrieve data. I think you can only do that for about if you filter on a specific data source, I think the limit is 500 records or list items that you can return. So using collections not only improves the performance of your app, but it's also a nice way for you to actually, in runtime, check what your data is and then to retrieve that data. without querying the data source every time.
Oh, cool, thanks. Am I correct in saying that you just said that its limit is like 500 records collection?
So, no. The collection isn't limited. If you don't use a collection and you query the data directly without using the common data service, obviously, there's what's called a delegation limit that you get. That's 500 records. So if I didn't use collections in that example and I just queried the SharePoint tracker list directly, once that tracker list reaches 500 or more items, it's only going to return the first 500 for me, and that might be problematic, especially in big organizations. If you think about large enterprises, they might have 100 policies and 2,000 users. So, for every user, you might want to log an item in that tracker list for when they view the item and when they accept the item. So that's what is that? 4,000 times 100. That's 40,000? Yeah, 400,000 actually. So yeah, you will quickly run into limitations. And I think that's why I also mentioned the CDS. When you run into these issues, even though we've used SharePoint as a data source, typically for larger implementations, we would rather advise clients to opt for the CDS, which is a much more scalable solution in a scenario like that.
Gideon.
Cool. Thanks, Gideon.
Cool. You're welcome.
Gideon.
Hi.
Hi, it's Ewan. How you doing?
Good on you, man.
Good. I actually just want to add some further clarity to CISO, just in case it didn't come through clear. That 500 limitation that Gideon was referring to in this instance was related to SharePoint. I just don't want you to get the impression that that is a general delegation limitation. It varies depending on obviously whether the database source has processing capabilities on the database side to kind of do on data source processing when the filters applied and pass that back to you. In the case of SharePoint, it hasn't got that ability, so that's where the limitation comes in, and it makes sense to do the collection.
Cool.
Yeah, so if I can maybe also add to that, so some of the data sources, like the Common Data Service, also provides paging methods. So you would be able to retrieve, 500 records at a one single query and then start paging through that, right? And then save that record set back. I've yet to see a Power App that actually goes above 500 records. I just feel that that's quite a lot of information to display, but I'm sure they're out there. Normally what we see also what happens is that, you connect to a data source and people will tend to filter and search more on the data source and only retrieve what they want to display rather than display everything and, then filter based on that. So that's just something that I personally have picked up in the Power App so far.
Cool.
So guys, I just want to share a few resources also, additional that I think it is worth showing. Thank you very much, first of all, Gideon. That was great. I've once again learned quite a lot. That was really awesome. And I can see how I can definitely start making use of your solutions in a lot of the customer requirements that we get, especially displaying the PDF document inside of a Canvas app and then, getting approval based on that information that's being displayed, So a lot of the time it's terms and conditions or even making sure that, people read the documentation and make sure they accept it, right? Super Sisu, so one of the great sites that we have is and I'm pretty sure that I've mentioned this quite a few times, but it's the Microsoft Learn site. So inside of the Learn site, we've got all the different modules and paths that you can go and view. Anything from Power Apps right through to AI Builder to Power BI, and this is a very great platform that will, showcase how do you build your first app, where do you get started, and it's free. So the great thing here is that you can go and sign in, you complete the modules, the hands-on learning path, and you can essentially go and write in a certification or exam based on that. So there's also certification that is available, and this learning path, it starts from the beginning. So if you've got no experience with Power Apps or even the product itself, it will showcase exactly, how do you get started, how do you get an instance up and running, right through to the more, intrigue stuff of how do you combine applications like Power Apps and Power Automate, how do you do, I think there's a UI flow here as well now, the RPA, those type of things. AI Builder is a great product that we have as well. So there's quite a lot of information on this. If you've got time to and you make some time available to learn. Then also something else that's coming up is called Microsoft Inspire, and the great thing is that it is one of our great showcase platforms of the year that is coming up. This is July 31st and 32nd. And what it will showcase is, all the latest and greatest new things that's coming out in Inspire, the benefit. It will showcase, all the great works that some of our partners have done, some of the great works of what the community has done, what's coming out in some of the session building, and also the Partner of the Year awards, right? So a lot of these content that's being delivered at Ignite is really helpful for things like businesses going through digital transformation, where to start, what as other companies have done, and all the different sessions. Like there's a bunch of people talking in here. I know there's always great sessions from Judson and Gabriella, not to mention Satya as well, on specific topics of business application, business transformation. So do have a look out for that. Like I said, it is now they've changed it into a digital experience, but it used to be an in-person event. So it's always great to view these things online. And then lastly is that there's quite a lot of content that's being published on YouTube at the moment, and it's all the product sets, right? So if we start looking at what we have from I almost want to call it a business application sessions, there's quite a lot of content that they cover there, everything from Business Central right through from ERP side of things, right through to the Power Apps, the Power Builder, the AI Builder, Power Automate. So those are the things that I would suggest you guys also go have a look at, and then follow the community. So the Dynamic 365 communities and the Dynamic 365 Saturdays is also a great place to go and have a look at it. So I'll just quickly share that links as well with you guys. But they've made, for instance, a playlist, and we can go into all of these things that they have, where you can go and look at things like what is new, what is coming. So, and is recent. Like this has just been updated 4 days ago, right? Lastly, like I said, is the Dynamics communities. And the great thing what they have is they've got videos and different segments that comes from the community, and those are the guys that is essentially the MVPs. And then also what they have is talks with Fast Track. So inside, I believe it's the 365, or no, sorry, it's the Tech Talks. My bad. But inside of the Tech Talks, that's the talks that they've got from our Fast Track team. And what's great here is that the FastTrack team is, if you're not aware of FastTrack, it's a Microsoft service that's being provided that helps quite a lot with things like on-prem to cloud migration, rollout, all of those type of strategies that people think of, and they've got different categories here. And this is always interesting to look at from a product perspective, what they do and what's the solutions that they've done with customers. You know, there's, for instance, here is one of the great new features. There's the dual write functionality that we have. Here they talk about the fraud protection modules that's out and about. And then, you know, the future of Outlook integration with Power Apps and Dynamics. So there's a bunch of great sessions on here that FastTrack provides us. And then you can also go and go have a look at the programs that they offer. And then, you know, this is some great content that is available that I personally, you know, where I gather my information from, to be honest. So those are just some of the resources. And once again, you guys, if there is anything that you guys want us specifically to cover, let us know. I think from a product perspective, we'll start covering more and more things that's going to be available in the second wave release, new things that's coming out, you know, working with things like the private virtual agent, omni-channel, chatbots, those type of things. But if there's anything else, please let us know. You know, I'm very excited to, if I look at what's on the landscape for things like Power Automate and Power Apps, you know, there's quite a bit of things that they've recently enhanced and then also released. Some of the features that I've seen, for instance, is things like enhancements, SAP integration into Power Automate, and then also building out, you know, a Power Canvas application on top of those SAP legacy apps. So those type of features I found very interesting to see what they have. From anybody else on the call and our team, is there anything else that you guys want maybe us to cover, or are we going to call it a day? Ewan, Claire, Gideon?
I think nothing more from my side. Just thanks, Gideon, for doing the demo for us.
Cool. You're welcome, Claire.
Yeah, I'm cool on my side as well. And Gideon, thanks. It was a great demo, very insightful. Thanks for shooting.
Thanks, Ewan. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. And thanks for everybody from the community that's supporting us and joining us and making sure that, you know, that we are successful in what we do. I think from my side, you know, it was really great to see how people use the Power Automate and Power Apps for these type of use cases. I think if you had to previously build it out yourself or even use a third-party ISV program, you know, it would have taken yonks to get there if you could have ever gotten there, you know. But yeah, if everybody is okay with it, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to close the call. I know there's some load shedding on its way, so, you know, thank you guys so much and have a wonderful evening.
Cool.
Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Good evening. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.